The alarm systems across Zenith Prime Station screamed warnings that made no sense. Ambassador Thakren watched the main display with growing confusion as his four eyes tried to process what the sensors were telling him. Something massive was coming out of empty space, tearing through reality itself like paper being ripped apart. The object that emerged made the ambassador's blood run cold. It was a warship, larger than anything he had seen in his 300 years of service to the Galactic Council. Its hull was dark and scarred, covered in burns and impacts from weapons that shouldn't exist anymore. The metal looked ancient, corroded by time itself, yet the ship's engines still glowed with power. Strange symbols marked its side, letters from a writing system that predated modern galactic civilization by thousands of years. Thakren pressed his communicator with a trembling claw. "Get me the historical archives immediately. I need identification on this vessel." Around him, the council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from 847 different species began shouting questions and demands. Some called for military response. Others wanted to flee. The mantis-like ambassador raised his arms for silence, but nobody was listening anymore. The ancient warship hung in space like a ghost from a forgotten era. Its weapon systems were powered down, but every military analyst in the station could see the truth. Those guns were old, yes, but they were built with technology that modern science barely understood. If that ship decided to fight, Zenith Prime wouldn't survive the encounter. Then the transmission came through. The audio was broken and filled with static, but the words were clear enough to make Thakren's heart skip several beats. The language was old, so old that the computer needed 17 seconds to find a translation matrix. When it did, the message played across every speaker in the station. "This is the United Earth Spaceship Indomitable, Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We are returning home after mission completion. Please provide current navigational coordinates for Earth, Sol System, Orion Arm. Requesting immediate assistance. Our crew is in critical condition." The silence that followed was absolute. Earth. Sol 3. The dead world. The planet that had destroyed itself in nuclear fire 20,000 years ago, leaving nothing but radioactive dust and broken cities. Every school child in the galaxy learned about Earth as a warning. A cautionary tale about what happened when a species discovered weapons before wisdom. But here was a ship, claiming to be from Earth, asking for directions home. Thakren made a decision. Open a channel, and someone wake up our linguist experts, all of them. It took 6 hours to establish proper communication. The ship's AI was sophisticated but ancient, operating on principles that modern computers had abandoned millennia ago. When the channel finally stabilized, 3 faces appeared on the screen, and Thakren found himself staring at creatures he had only seen in archaeological reconstructions. Humans. Actual living humans. The woman in the center wore a uniform that was falling apart at the seams. Her hair was gray and white, pulled back from a face lined with exhaustion. Her eyes were the color of Earth's ancient oceans, blue and deep and currently filled with confusion. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Indomitable." "Who am I speaking with?" Thakren stood straighter, trying to project calm authority while his mind raced with impossible questions. "I am Ambassador Thakren of the Velkari people, currently serving as primary administrator of Zenith Prime, capital station of the Galactic Council." "Captain Chen, I must ask you a very important question. What year did you leave Earth?" The woman glanced at someone off-screen, then back at the camera. "We departed Earth in the year 22,314 by the common calendar. Our mission was a 500-year expedition to establish first contact with civilizations in the Outer Rim. We've been gone for 532 years, but we ran into some problems with a dark space anomaly." "Why are you asking?" 500 years. They thought they had been gone for 500 years. Thakren felt a wave of pity wash over him. How could he tell them? How could anyone deliver this kind of news? "Captain Chen, I'm afraid I have some very difficult information to share with you. The current year by the old Earth calendar is 42,831. You haven't been gone for 500 years. You've been gone for 20,517 years. The woman's face went white. Behind her, someone cursed loudly. A third voice, male and shaking, said something that the translator couldn't process properly. Chen gripped the edges of her command chair so hard her knuckles turned white. "That's impossible. Our clocks, our systems, everything says we've only been gone for 5 centuries. How can 20,000 years have passed?" Dark space anomalies can cause severe temporal distortion, Thakren explained gently. You experience time at one rate while the universe continued at another. Captain, there's something else you need to know. According to our historical records, Earth was destroyed approximately 18,000 years ago. The planet is listed as uninhabitable, a dead world consumed by nuclear war. The silence stretched on for 10 full seconds. Then Captain Chen's expression changed. The shock disappeared, replaced by something harder, something that made Thakren remember that this woman commanded a warship that could probably level his entire station. Ambassador, Chen said softly, your records are wrong. I'm looking at our long-range sensors right now, and I can see the Sol system from here. Earth's biosignature is strong. The planet is alive. Someone has been living on my home world, and I want to know who. The signal cut off before Thakren could respond. In the silence that followed, every being in the council chamber understood what had just happened. They had told these ancient humans that their world was dead. They had lied, whether intentionally or not. And now a 20,000-year-old warship was heading for Earth, with a crew that had just learned their entire civilization should be extinct. Thakren looked at the readings coming from the Indomitable's power systems and made another decision. Prepare my personal ship. I'm going with them. And someone tell me everything we really know about what happened to Earth, because something tells me the official story is about to fall apart. The journey to Earth should have taken 3 weeks with modern drives. The Indomitable needed 6 because its engines were running on technology that predated most of the species in the Galactic Council. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge watching the stars slide past and tried not to think about everything she had lost. 20,000 years. Her parents were dust. Her friends were dust. The world she had left behind, the cities and cultures and entire civilization she had known, all of it was gone. She had left Earth as a young captain in humanity's first great adventure into deep space. She was coming back as a ghost. Behind her, Ambassador Thakren worked at a temporary console the crew had set up for him. The mantis-like alien had insisted on joining them, claiming he wanted to ensure a peaceful first contact. Sarah suspected the truth was simpler. He wanted to see what had really happened to Earth, and he didn't trust the official story any more than she did. Captain, you should see this. That was Marcus Webb, her chief engineer. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and hands that shook when he thought nobody was watching. Marcus had a daughter back on Earth, or at least he used to. Now that daughter had been dead for 20,000 years, and Marcus was barely holding himself together. Sarah walked over to his station. What do you have? I've been going through our long-range database, cross-referencing it with the information Ambassador Thakren provided. 3 of the colonies we were supposed to visit are gone. Not destroyed exactly, but empty. The infrastructure is still there, but there's no life, no power signatures, nothing. Just ruins. The screen showed images of dead cities on airless worlds. Buildings that had once housed thousands of humans now stood silent under alien stars. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. What happened to them? Thakren approached, his multiple legs making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. The official records say these colonies were abandoned during the resource wars of the 35th millennium. But Captain, I've been reviewing the historical archives more carefully. The timeline doesn't match. These colonies went silent thousands of years before the supposed wars began. Sarah met his compound eyes. You think someone is lying about our history? I think someone has been lying about humanity's history for a very long time. Dr. Amara Okonkwo emerged from the medical bay where she had been reviewing biological samples. The xenobiologist looked exhausted but determined. I found something in the ship's memory banks. The Indomitable wasn't alone. Earth launched 12 expedition ships, all identical to ours, all heading in different directions. According to the departure manifest, we should have all returned within the same century. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Let me guess. None of the others came back. According to the galactic records, no. We're the only one that survived. But here's the strange part. There are reports throughout the past 20,000 years of ghost ships appearing in various sectors. Ancient vessels matching the Indomitable's design, seen briefly before vanishing again. What if the other ships hit the same temporal anomaly we did? What if they're still out there, lost in dark space, trying to find their way home? The bridge fell silent. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, 11 more ships might be wandering, their crews believing they had only been gone a few centuries, unaware that humanity had apparently died and the galaxy had moved on without them. Marcus broke the silence. Why didn't anyone look for us? 12 ships disappear and nobody launches rescue missions? Because by the time you were officially declared lost, Thakren said quietly, Earth had already fallen to the Archons. Sarah spun to face him. What did you say? The ambassador's antenna drooped in what Sarah was learning to recognize as regret.
I wasn't supposed to tell you this.
The council leadership wanted to control the information flow. But you deserved the truth. Earth wasn't destroyed by nuclear war. 21,000 years ago, a species called the Archons invaded your system. They were an ancient race, powerful beyond measure, with technology that could enslave entire worlds through psychic connection. They took Earth, Captain. They conquered your people and ruled them for 3,000 years. The rage that filled Sarah was hot enough to burn stars, and the council did nothing. The council didn't exist yet, not in its current form. By the time we had the power to challenge the Archons, they had vanished. They abandoned Earth and disappeared into the space between galaxies. We assumed they had taken humanity with them, or exterminated them entirely. The nuclear war story was created later, to explain why Earth was empty when survey ships finally reached the system. Marcus slammed his fist on the console. So for 18,000 years, while you all built your perfect galactic civilization, nobody bothered to check if any humans actually survived. That's not entirely fair, Thakren began, but Sarah cut him off. Isn't it? You erased us. You decided we were extinct and didn't bother to verify. Well, guess what, Ambassador? We're not extinct. Someone is living on Earth, and I'm going to find out who. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Then an alarm sounded and all personal conflicts were forgotten in an instant. Captain, we're entering the Sol system, reported the navigation officer, and we're being scanned by multiple defense platforms. Very sophisticated designs unlike anything in the database. The view screen shifted, showing Earth's home system. The sun burned bright and familiar, exactly as Sarah remembered it. But everything else was wrong. The asteroid belt was filled with massive stations. Mars had orbital rings. Jupiter's moons were covered in cities. And Earth itself was surrounded by a network of defense satellites that would have been impossible with the technology humanity possessed when she left. Then the communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. The voice that came through spoke English, but the accent was strange. The words clipped and formal in a way that suggested the language had evolved significantly. Unidentified vessel. This is Terran Commonwealth Defense Command. You are entering restricted space. Power down your weapons and state your identification or you will be fired upon. This is your only warning. Sarah looked at Thakren, then at her crew. She had left Earth as an explorer, a representative of humanity's hope and curiosity. She was returning to a world that didn't know her, defended by people who spoke her language but thought she was a threat. She opened the channel, keeping her voice steady and strong. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Spaceship Indomitable, serial number 7732. Launched from Earth in the year 22,314. We are returning from a long-range expedition mission. I am requesting permission to approach Earth and return home. The silence that followed lasted for nearly a minute. When the response came, the voice on the other end was shaking. Indomitable. The ghost ship. You're really real. Stand by for escort. The Chancellor is going to want to meet you personally. Welcome home, Captain Chen. Welcome to the Terran Commonwealth. The Earth that Sarah Chen saw through the landing shuttle's windows was both familiar and completely alien. The continents were in the right places, the oceans still blue and vast, but everything else had changed. Massive towers reached into the sky, taller than anything from her time. The city sprawled across entire regions, connected by transportation networks that glowed with energy. And above it all, the orbital defense platforms hung like guardian angels, bristling with weapons that made the Indomitable look like a museum piece. They landed at a facility in what used to be called Geneva. The landing pad was surrounded by soldiers in armor that looked more advanced than anything Sarah had seen, even in the Galactic Council's military. When the shuttle door opened, she stepped out onto soil she hadn't touched in 20,000 years and felt tears burning in her eyes. The welcoming party was led by a woman who carried herself like someone used to command. She was tall, with dark skin and gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her uniform was crisp and formal, decorated with medals that Sarah didn't recognize. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Captain Chen, I am Chancellor Elena Vasquez, leader of the Terran Commonwealth. On behalf of all humanity, I welcome you home. I only wish the circumstances were better. Sarah saluted out of instinct, then felt foolish. She was saluting a government that hadn't existed when she left. Chancellor, I have many questions, and I will answer them all. But first, you and your crew need rest and medical attention. You've been in stasis for longer than any human should survive. It's a miracle you're alive at all. They were taken to a facility that was part hospital, part research center, part military base. Over the next 3 days, doctors examined them while historians interviewed them, recording every detail of the world they had left behind. Sarah submitted to it all patiently, but what she really wanted was answers. On the 4th day, Chancellor Vasquez invited her to a private meeting in a room with walls made of transparent steel, overlooking a city that never slept. The Chancellor poured 2 glasses of something that tasted like whiskey, but had a smoothness that suggested 20,000 years of refinement. You want to know what happened? Vasquez said. It wasn't a question. I want to know why the galaxy thinks we're extinct when we're clearly not. The Chancellor took a long drink before answering. Because for 3,000 years we might as well have been. The Archons came when you were gone, Captain. They arrived with ships that could crack planets and minds that could bend entire populations to their will. They didn't negotiate. They didn't offer terms. They simply took control. Sarah listened as Vasquez explained the horror. The Archons had a weapon, a psychic network that could connect to most species' neural patterns and force complete obedience. They had used it to enslave hundreds of worlds, building an empire that stretched across multiple galaxies. Earth was just one more conquest, its people reduced to biological components in a vast machine. But we had something they didn't expect, Vasquez continued. Human neural chemistry is different from most species. The Archon network could affect us, but it couldn't completely control us. Some people, maybe 1 in 1,000, were completely immune. Others could resist for short periods. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The resistance, Sarah said. The last rising. It took nearly 3,000 years, but we learned. We studied our captors. We stole their technology. We built weapons, in secret, passed down through generations that knew nothing but slavery. And then 15,000 years ago we struck. Every hidden cell, every secret base, every resistance fighter activated at once. We killed them, Captain. We killed every Archon on Earth and destroyed every one of their ships in our system. The pride in Vasquez's voice was mixed with something darker. Sarah recognized it because she had felt it herself during combat missions. It was the satisfaction of survival earned through violence. What happened to the Archons after that? They left. They abandoned this part of the galaxy entirely. We assumed we had hurt them badly enough that they decided we weren't worth the trouble. So we stayed hidden. We used their cloaking technology to hide our worlds. We spread false information through the galactic networks, making everyone think Earth was radioactive and dead, and we rebuilt. We took everything the Archons had taught us, everything we had learned from defeating them, and we made ourselves strong. Sarah looked out at the city below. Millions of people living and working, building a civilization that had been forged in slavery and war. You've been preparing for them to come back. We've been preparing for the entire galaxy to be our enemy if necessary. The Council didn't help us when the Archons came. Why would we trust them now? Before Sarah could respond, Marcus burst into the room, followed by Dr. Okonkwo. The engineer's face was pale, his hands shaking as he held a datapad. Captain, you need to see this. Now. The datapad showed sensor readings from long-range observation posts at the edge of the galaxy. Sarah didn't understand most of the technical details, but she understood the conclusion. Ships were moving in the void between galaxies, thousands of them, maybe millions, and their energy signatures matched the Archon vessels that had been found in Earth's historical databases. They're coming back, Okonkwo said quietly. The Archons are returning, and they're bringing an army. Chancellor Vasquez took the datapad and reviewed it with the calm efficiency of someone who had been expecting this moment for years. How long do we have? 18 months. Maybe less if they have better drives than we think. The Chancellor nodded slowly, then looked at Sarah. Captain Chen, I'm going to be blunt. The Indomitable is a symbol. It's proof that humanity had a past before the Archons, that we were explorers and dreamers before we became warriors. I want to use your ship to announce Earth's return to the galactic stage. I want every species in the Council to know that humanity survived, and that we're not asking for permission to exist anymore. Sarah thought about the dead colonies she had seen on the way here. She thought about 20,000 years of human suffering, of generations born into slavery, of people who had fought and died just to earn the right to be free. And she thought about the Archons coming back with an army that could enslave the entire galaxy. What do you need from me? Vasquez smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine. Help me convince the galaxy to fight. The Council thinks we're a myth or a threat. You're evidence that we're neither. You're the bridge between who we were and who we've become. The Archons are coming for everyone, not just Earth. If we don't work together, we'll all fall separately. Marcus spoke up from behind Sarah. There's something else. I've been going through the Indomitable systems and I found something strange. The ship has components that don't match the rest of the design, pieces that were added in secret before we launched. I think someone knew this was going to happen. I think someone prepared for it. Sarah turned to look at her engineer. What kind of components? The kind that could activate a defense network. Captain, I think the Indomitable isn't just a warship. I think it's a key, and whatever it unlocks has been waiting for us to come home for 20,000 years. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Outside, the sun was setting on a world that had survived extinction. Inside, 5 people stared at each other and realized that the war they had been dreading was about to begin, whether they were ready or not. Ambassador Thakren stood before the Galactic Council and wondered if he was about to commit career suicide. Around him, representatives from 847 species filled the chamber, their voices creating a noise that sounded like chaos given form. They were arguing about Earth, about the Archons, about whether any of this was real or just human propaganda. Order! The council speaker, a crystalline being named Jarketh, rang a chime that cut through the noise. Ambassador Thakren has requested emergency session time. We will hear him. Thakren stepped forward, his forelegs steady despite the nervousness coursing through his body. Thank you, Speaker. I have just returned from Earth. The world we all believed was dead is very much alive. The humans have not only survived, they have thrived, and they bring warning of an existential threat to our entire civilization. He activated the holographic display, showing the sensor data from the void. The images of Archon ships moving in formation silenced the chamber faster than any call for order could have. The Archons are returning, Thakren continued. Our intelligence estimates they will reach Council space within 18 months. They bring with them a fleet numbering in the millions built over 18,000 years of preparation. And according to human historical records, their psychic network can enslave most known species within minutes of exposure. A representative from the Kelhari Collective, a species known for their militant stance, spoke up. Even if this is true, why should we trust the humans? They've been hiding from us for thousands of years. How do we know they're not the real threat? Before Thakren could respond, a new voice cut through the chamber. Captain Sarah Chen walked in, escorted by Chancellor Vasquez and a contingent of Commonwealth guards. She moved with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove and everything to fight for. You don't have to trust us, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, but you should trust your own survival instinct. The Archons will come whether you believe in them or not. When they do, they won't negotiate. They won't offer terms. They'll simply take control of your minds and turn you into slaves. Earth learned this the hard way. We paid the price in blood and suffering. Now we're offering you a chance to avoid the same fate. Chancellor Vasquez stepped forward. The Terran Commonwealth proposes an alliance. We will share our anti-Archon weapons technology, our knowledge of their tactics, and our defense systems. In exchange, we ask for full membership in the Galactic Council, reparations for the 3,000 years of abandonment, and a unified military response to the Archon threat. The chamber erupted into debate. Some species saw the logic in the proposal. Others saw it as blackmail. A few suggested that humanity was exaggerating the threat to gain power. Thakren watched it all and felt his hope dying. The council was too fractured, too political to act quickly. Then the alarm sounded. The holographic display shifted, showing real-time sensor data from a colony world called Threshold 7. Archon ships were coming out of dimensional folds, dozens of them attacking without warning. The colony's defenses were being overwhelmed within minutes. That colony has 40 million inhabitants, Jarketh said, his crystalline voice shaking. We have ships in the area, but they won't arrive for hours. The Indomitable can be there in 30 minutes, Sarah said. Give me clearance and we'll defend your people. The speaker looked at her, then at Vasquez, then at the data showing millions of lives hanging in the balance. Granted. Save them, Captain. Sarah was already running. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel above Threshold 7 and immediately opened fire. The old warship's weapons had been designed to fight unknown threats with overwhelming force, and against the Archon ships, they proved devastatingly effective. Energy beams that could crack planetary crust tore through Archon armor. Missiles loaded with experimental warheads detonated in patterns that disrupted their shields. But Sarah wasn't alone. Chancellor Vasquez had sent 12 ships from Earth's defense fleet, each one a modern interpretation of the Indomitable's design. They moved in perfect formation, their tactics honed by 15,000 years of preparation for exactly this moment. Marcus worked frantically at the engineering station, routing power to weapons that were never meant to fire continuously. Captain, the old girl is holding together, but I don't know for how long. Keep her running, Marcus. We just need to last until Council reinforcements arrive. Dr. Okonkwo was at the sensor station, analyzing the Archon ships as they fought. Captain, I'm detecting psychic broadcasts from the Archon vessels. They're trying to establish neural connections with the colonists below, but the signals are being disrupted by something like there's interference. Sarah felt a cold realization wash over her. It's us. They're trying to connect to human neural patterns too, and it's creating noise in their network. We're jamming them just by being here. The battle raged for 2 hours. The Indomitable took hits that would have destroyed lesser ships, her ancient armor absorbing damage that made Marcus weep at his console. 3 of the Earth ships were destroyed, their crews dying to protect people they had never met. But when Council reinforcements finally arrived, the Archons retreated, fleeing back into dimensional folds. Sarah stood on her bridge, watching the rescue operations begin below, and felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. They had won, but barely, and this was just a scouting force. The real invasion was still coming. Back at Zenith Prime, the Council held an emergency vote. The images of human ships defending a Council world, of Earth's forces bleeding to protect strangers, had changed minds. Not all of them, but enough. The vote passed. Earth was granted full Council membership. And more importantly, a joint task force was authorized to prepare for the Archon invasion. In the weeks that followed, Sarah watched as volunteers from 23 species joined the defensive fleet. She trained with commanders from a dozen different military traditions. She shared tactics and strategies with beings who had never met a human before, and slowly something that looked like hope began to grow. Marcus made another discovery. The components hidden in the Indomitable were indeed a key, part of a defense network built during humanity's first space age. Ancient weapons platforms scattered across the galaxy, waiting for activation. Nobody knew who had built them, or why they had trusted humanity with the key. But they were there, and they were powerful. The only problem was activation required precise coordinates, and those coordinates had been lost 20,000 years ago. Marcus was searching through corrupted databases trying to find them before time ran out. One evening, Sarah found Thakren in the observation deck, staring at the stars. The ambassador looked tired, older somehow despite his alien biology. You risked everything to help us, Sarah said. Why? Thakren's antenna twitched in what she had learned was his species' equivalent of a shrug. Because it was the right thing to do. Because the Council failed your people once and I couldn't let it happen again. And because I've seen what humanity can become when pushed to the edge. You don't surrender. You don't give up. You fight even when fighting seems hopeless. The galaxy needs that spirit right now. Sarah stood beside him, watching the ships of a dozen species training together in the distance. We're going to need more than spirit. The Archons have had 18,000 years to prepare. We have months. Then we make those months count. The alert came 3 days later. Long-range sensors detected massive movement in the void. The Archon fleet was coming, and they were ahead of schedule. Sarah looked at her crew, at the Allied ships gathering around them, at the Indomitable's scarred hull reflected in the window. They weren't ready. They might never be ready, but they would fight anyway. Because that's what humans did. The ruins of Haven Colony floated in the darkness. A graveyard of humanity's first attempt to reach the stars. It was here that the Allied fleet gathered, 7,000 ships from 23 species, all commanded by beings who had never fought together before. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and wondered if this would be enough. All ships report ready, Marcus said from his station. He looked exhausted but determined. his hand steady on the controls. The defense network is online. All platforms are responding to our commands. Sarah felt a moment of pride. Marcus had done it. He had found the coordinates buried in corrupted files and activated weapons that had been sleeping for 20 millennia. Ancient platforms hidden throughout the sector were powering up, adding their firepower to the defensive line. "Captain, they're here," Dr. Okonkwo announced. The Archon fleet emerged from dimensional folds like a plague of locusts. Sarah had seen the sensor predictions, had studied the numbers, but seeing them in person was different. There were millions of ships, each one radiating power that made modern vessels look like toys. They moved in perfect formation, a unified consciousness spread across an armada. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. Hold your positions. Wait for my command." The Archons advanced slowly, confidently as if they knew victory was inevitable. Sarah watched them come and activated her personal communicator, speaking directly to the fleet commanders. "Remember your training. They'll try to establish psychic connections. Keep your neural dampeners active. Don't let them into your minds." The Kren's voice came through from his command ship. "Captain, our analysts believe the Archon flagship is at the center of their formation. If we can reach it, we might be able to disrupt their entire network." "That's a big if, Ambassador." "I know, but it's the only chance we have." Sarah made her decision. "Marcus, I need you to get a strike team to that flagship. Take volunteers only. Your mission is to penetrate their defenses and shut down their psychic network." "I'll go myself," Marcus said. "No. I need you here. I'll lead the strike team." The engineer turned to stare at her. "Captain, that's suicide." "Probably, but I'm the best qualified. I've studied their systems. I know how they think. And besides, someone needs to do it." She smiled at him. "Keep my ship safe, Marcus." "That's an order." The battle began with a wave of fire that turned space itself bright. The ancient defense platforms opened up first, their weapons powerful enough to vaporize Archon ships in single hits. The Allied fleet followed, 7,000 ships unleashing everything they had. For a moment, Sarah let herself hope. They were holding. Then the Archons activated their network. The psychic wave hit like a tsunami, crashing through neural patterns and seeking minds to control. Half the fleet went silent in seconds, their crews overwhelmed by the mental assault. Ships turned on their former allies, firing at vessels that had been beside them moments before. The defensive line collapsed into chaos, but not everywhere. Human ships kept fighting, their neural chemistry providing natural resistance. Species with strong mental shields held out longer, and slowly, desperately, the fleet adapted, using neural dampeners and psychic countermeasures that Earth had spent 15,000 years developing. Sarah launched from the Indomitable in a strike craft, leading a team of 12 volunteers from 6 different species. They dove into the heart of the Archon formation, dodging fire and destruction, heading for the flagship that controlled everything. The Archon command ship was a monster, larger than any station Sarah had ever seen. Its hull was covered in biological components that pulsed with unnatural light. As they approached, she felt pressure building in her mind, the network trying to force its way into her consciousness. She gritted her teeth and pushed it away. The strike team breached the hull and fought their way inside. The interior was a nightmare, a fusion of technology and biology that seemed to writhe as they moved through it. Archon defenders met them with weapons and telepathic attacks. Sarah's team fought back with everything they had, advancing meter by meter toward the core. By the time they reached the central chamber, only 4 of them remained. Sarah, the Kren, and 2 others whose names she forced herself to remember, even as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. The chamber was vast, filled with machinery that hummed with power. At the center was a being that barely looked biological anymore, more machine than flesh, connected to thousands of cables that pulsed with neural energy. The Archon commander spoke directly into her mind. "You are impressive, Captain Chen. Your species resists us better than any we have encountered. But you cannot win. We have evolved beyond your comprehension. We bring unity, an end to conflict and suffering. Why do you fight against peace?" Sarah raised her weapon. "Because your peace means slavery. Because you take away choice. Because beings deserve to make their own mistakes and find their own way. A romantic notion, but ultimately futile. We have already studied your neural patterns. We know how to break your resistance now. When this battle ends, humanity will join our network willingly." Dr. Okonkwo's voice crackled through Sarah's communicator. "Captain, I've analyzed the network. It's quantum-based, operating on frequencies that most species can't naturally perceive. But human brain patterns disrupt those frequencies. You're not immune by accident. Someone engineered humanity specifically to resist this kind of control. The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humans weren't naturally resistant to the Archon network. They had been designed that way, modified millions of years ago by some species that knew this threat would come. Humanity had been created as a weapon, a defense mechanism against psychic slavery. Captain, there's more, Okonkwo continued. The network needs a mediator, a consciousness to maintain stability. Right now, the Archons use enslaved minds for that purpose. But if someone willingly connected to the network, someone with human neural patterns, they could transform it. They could give free will back to every being connected to it. Sarah understood. She understood what Okonkwo was telling her, what choice she had to make. If she connected to the network willingly, if she let it into her mind while maintaining her resistance, she could become the mediator. She could save billions of enslaved beings across the galaxy, but she would have to give up her physical existence, becoming a consciousness spread across the network forever. She looked at Thakren. The ambassador's compound eyes showed understanding and sorrow. You don't have to do this, Captain. We'll find another way. There is no other way. You know that. Sarah walked to the central interface and placed her hands on the controls. The Archon commander tried to stop her, but Thakren fired, destroying the being's physical form. The network shuddered, losing its coordinator, becoming unstable. Sarah closed her eyes and opened her mind. The flood of consciousness was overwhelming. Billions of minds, all connected, all enslaved. She felt their pain, their trapped screams, their desperate hope. And she felt the network itself, a vast machine of thought and control. It tried to consume her, to break her will and add her to the collective. But she was human, and humans didn't break. Sarah pushed back. She took her resistance, her free will, her stubborn refusal to surrender, and she spread it through the network like fire. She showed every trapped consciousness what freedom meant. She gave them back their choice. The network transformed. It didn't die, but it changed, becoming something new. A connection between minds that allowed communication without control. A shared consciousness that preserved individual identity. And at the center of it all was Sarah Chen, the eternal mediator. The guardian who would ensure no one could ever use the network for slavery again. Outside, the Archon fleet stopped fighting. Millions of ships hung in space as their crews suddenly regained control of their own minds. Some fled, some surrendered. Some simply shut down, their pilots overwhelmed by the sudden return of freedom. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Marcus watched as the battle ended. He felt tears streaming down his face as he realized what Sarah had done, what she had sacrificed. The captain's chair sat empty, but her voice came through every speaker in the fleet, calm and strong and somehow everywhere at once. This is Captain Sarah Chen. The network is secured. The Archons are defeated. All ships stand down. The war is over. The days that followed were chaos. The Galactic Council had to deal with millions of freed beings, former Archon slaves who suddenly had nowhere to go. Earth opened its borders, offering sanctuary to any who needed it. The Terran Commonwealth became a beacon of hope, proof that freedom could survive even the darkest oppression. Marcus stayed on the Indomitable, unable to leave the ship that had been his home for so long. He found comfort in the daily routines of maintenance and repair. And sometimes, late at night, he would sit in the captain's chair and talk to the empty air, knowing somehow that Sarah could hear him. Thakren became the new council chairman, elected unanimously after his role in the war. He spent his days building bridges between species, ensuring that no world would ever be abandoned again, and he made sure that Earth's story, humanity's true history, was taught to every child in every school across the galaxy. Dr. Okonkwo became Earth's ambassador, traveling to distant worlds and sharing the knowledge humanity had gained through suffering. She carried with her the message that Sarah had died to prove, that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and that no being should ever be forced to surrender their will. The Indomitable was placed in memorial orbit around Earth, a monument to the crew who had left home 20,000 years ago and returned to save the galaxy. Children would look up at night and see it, a bright point of light in the sky, and their parents would tell them stories about the captain who became eternal. And in the network, Sarah Chen existed as something more than human and less than God. She watched over the connected consciousness, feeling every thought and emotion of beings across the galaxy. She was lonely sometimes, cut off from physical existence, but she was not alone. Billions of minds touched hers every day, sharing their joys and sorrows, their hopes and fears. She had become the guardian of their freedom, the protector of their right to choose. On Earth in the capital city, They built a statue of a woman in an ancient military uniform. The inscription at its base read, "Captain Sarah Chen. She ensured we would never be forgotten." And above the planet, in the network that connected minds across the stars, Sarah smiled. The galaxy had forgotten Earth once, but now, because of what she and her crew had sacrificed, humanity would be remembered forever. The war was over. The fight for freedom would never end. But for the first time in 20,000 years, Earth and its children were not alone. They were part of something larger, something better. They were part of a galaxy that had learned, through suffering and sacrifice, that every being deserved the right to choose their own destiny, and that was worth everything.